so I'm here.
Welcome. And it's 1:02, so I'd like to call the meeting to order and just begin with a verification of quorum. Brittany, can you confirm?
I can verify that there is a quorum present.
Thank you. So before we get into the general business, I wanted to check and see if there were any matters subsequent to the agenda being posted. Welcome, Barb. I'm not seeing any hands. I will just report out myself. Yesterday, Cal CCA held a lobby day in Sacramento, and it was quite refreshing to see people in person. And it was also a privilege to be able to talk about the long duration storage deals that we've undertaken and the Firm Clean Resources RFO that's ongoing. It was impressive to the people we met with, and I think that was great to be able to tout what CC Power is doing. So unless there's anything that popped into people's minds, I'm going to turn to public comment on any matter that's not on the agenda. So if the public wants to raise their hand, you can feel free to enter a public comment. We'll just give them a second. And were there any comments submitted by email? I'm seeing
We did not receive any comments via email.
Thank you. And I'm not seeing any hands either. So let's go ahead and turn to the consent calendar. There are 3 items. The minutes from 2 meetings on January 19 and February 25, and the resolution extending our virtual meeting status. Are there any questions on that or corrections? And if not, I'd look for a motion.
I'll move the consent calendar.
I'll second. It's Barbara.
So MCE and Clean Power SF. Any comments before I turn, or corrections before I turn to the public? Okay. So we'll see if there's any public comment on the consent calendar. Again, you can just use the raise the hand feature on my screen. It's at the bottom of the screen. I'm not seeing hands raised. Again, just checking for email comment. No comments on this one too?
None received.
Okay, thanks. So we'll move to the regular agenda, and this is really the substance of the meeting is the general
Can we
manager.
take a vote on the consent?
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Thank you, Brittany, for keeping us in order. So yes, a roll call on the consent calendar, please.
Okay, so for the consent agenda, Central Coast Community Energy,
Yes.
Clean Power SF,
Yes.
East Bay Community Energy, believe is absent. Marin Clean Energy,
Yes.
Peninsula Clean Energy,
Yes.
Redwood Coast Energy Authority,
Do I need to abstain? I wasn't present at the last meeting.
yes, if you could abstain.
Abstain.
San Jose Clean Energy,
Approve.
Silicon Valley Clean Energy,
Yes.
Sonoma Clean Power Authority,
Yes.
and Valley Clean Energy.
Yes.
The consent agenda passes. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we can turn to the regular calendar. So I was just remarking, I think there's 2 substantive items on our agenda, the general manager's report, giving us some updates, and then we'll get a budget update, which will require acknowledgement via resolution and a vote. So I'll turn to Tim Haynes now.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Right. Chris, would you go to the slide deck and page 3, if you would, please? Before I get into the report on the 2 projects that the board has approved, I'd like to add a comment. Last month, and with little fanfare, the board approved CC Power's 2nd long duration storage contract in little over a month. That was a monumental moment, and should not pass without recognizing what I think is the risk that the board took on that it could address market, stakeholder, and your own questions in completing those agreements. I think that the trust and the confidence that has been engendered is now leading to a more timely economic outcome with the firm Clean Resources. But beyond that, I look forward to just helping you shape the CC Power as a valuable tool that you can use to deliver customer-centered decarbonization services to your customers. The work of the POC needs, I think, to also be held front and center. The members of the POC have marshaled their knowledge, skill, and creativity in delivering us to this point. It's going to be rewarding for me to accompany the POC as it continues to produce those type of results in the next phase of the long duration storage contracts, the negotiations of the firm Clean Resources, and future contracts that the board puts before us. And then the final thing that I'd like to note is that what I've said holds true to the long duration storage developers, Onward and Tumbleweed, that we've entered into these long-term relationships with, as well as the stakeholders who will continue to engage as we continue to stand up CC Power. I appreciate the opportunity to have been in the catbird seat in order to be able to observe this as it's unfolded. And I'm looking forward to what it is that lies ahead for CC Power. Getting to the substance of today's GM report, with regard to long duration storage projects, Tumbleweed, we have until April 22nd to get the final approvals and execute the agreement. 6 of our 7 participants have already approved the agreement, and so we're in good shape here. Likewise, we're in good shape with Onward. May 30 is the final date to execute that agreement. 2 of our 6 participants have already approved their participation in that agreement. With regard to the firm Clean Resources, the last time that we spoke to the board was in January, and you authorized that we shortlist, and you approved the cost sharing agreement. We've since shortlisted, we've entered into the cost sharing agreement, and the negotiations are underway. The negotiating team is confident that what we're going to be able to do is bring those final contracts back before this board on the schedule that had been presented to you, and that would be in the June-July time period. With regard to the conflict of interest code, today, the Fair Political Practices Commission gave us feedback on our code. Legal is still reviewing those comments, but we feel as though we will be able to bring that code before the board at the next meeting. And with that, there would be approval by the board of it going into a 45-day public comment period. Mr. Chair, those are the several items that I wanted to comment and report on. And so I'll turn it back to you for board questions, if there are any, or to the public.
Rich, why don't we go to you first, and then we'll go to Barb.
Thank you. Tim, on Tumbleweed, when do we expect the 7th participant to approve the contract? Do we have a schedule?
We have Girish, we have it. Board Member Balachandran, we do have a schedule. The date escapes me. Perhaps Brittany has that at her fingertips.
Yeah, they should receive approval towards the end of March, and they did indicate they would be ready to execute the comments or execute the agreements the first week of April.
Thank you.
We'll turn to Barb.
Thank you. Thank you. And I think if I'm not mistaken, Brittany, that's San Francisco that you were referring to, correct?
Yes, correct.
Yeah, so we just by way of building on that a little bit, we just got through our policy committee hearing today successfully. And so we're just waiting now for the item to go to our full board for approval. I just wanted to chime in on the interim GM Haynes's recognition of where we're at. That's great. And I also wanted to just follow up a little bit on the FPPC conflict of interest code issue. You had mentioned public comment period. Can you say a little bit more about that requirement and where that public comment goes?
Yeah, I can.
Oh, thank you. Brittany.
I can answer that. So, yeah, there's a couple steps in getting the code adopted. The first is an initial review by the FPPC. Once they provided feedback, which we got this morning, it is a requirement that it is open for a public comment period. The only internal requirement we have is to send it to all of the board members and alternates. The FPPC does post it on their website as well. And then we would generally also send it to the CC Power listserv or have it as part of an agenda packet. So it is open to the public that way as well.
That's great. That's helpful. And so who are the comments intended to be delivered to? The FPPC or us?
It would be us, and then we
Okay.
would revise accordingly. Yes.
Got it. Thank you. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Any other board input on this part of the presentation? And then I think, Brittany, we were going to turn to public comment before moving on. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
So let's see if we have any public input on this part, and then we'll check again for public input after the budget update discussion. So is there anyone who wishes to speak on the general manager's updates? You can use the raise the hand feature. I'm not seeing any hands. So I think we're ready to move on to the budget update.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chris, if you could go to slide 5 in the deck. When we ultimately get to the resolutions, the staff is recommending that the board acknowledge the receipt of the treasurer's report and to apply the 2021 carryover that I'll discuss toward funding the insurance. The treasurer's report is included in the board material. There are 2 takeaways that I want to bring to your attention. The report shows that we have a $24,150 surplus that carries over into 2022. There's also a notation on the budget comparison report, page 4, that I authorized the negotiating team to exceed their contract limits to finalize the negotiations of the long-term duration storage contracts pending the board approval of the 2022 budget. As to the insurance, tumbleweed and onward agreements require that CC Power carry public officials liability, general liability, and auto insurance. We came to that determination in consultation with the POC, the members of risk management teams from the member organizations, and an insurance broker that we brought on. But this all took place after the 2022 budget had been approved. We have a quote from the broker for the insurance, and pending the board's approval, what we'll do is go forward and acquire the insurance. Let me see, I'm ready to go to the next slide, unless there are any questions or comments that board members may have with regard to the two items that I've touched base on so far.
Any board questions on that? Okay, why don't you go ahead and finish your presentation, then we can take, we'll probably vote on them one at a time, but I think we can take questions about both at that point.
Okay, very well, thank you. Go the next slide, thank you. This is the allocation of the general and project costs to the membership. The slide shows how we're proposing to allocate the 2021 carryover. You see that in the lower left-hand corner of this table. The $21,500 is allocated to the general fund. The thing to note here is that the $18,675 that was allocated to each of the members is not changed from what the 2022 budget that the board had approved in December. We're simply taking the carryover funds, adding it to that portion of the CC Power budget. The next column, Firm Clean Resources, shows the allocation of contract negotiation costs that the board had already approved in January. So there's no board action related to FCR during today's discussion. The long duration storage column includes a staff proposed allocation of the long duration storage contract negotiation costs. The project costs are here allocated based on the level of project participants in the project. And what has happened is that project participant shares in the projects are different than what had been approved in the 2022 budget assumptions. In a subsequent slide, what I'll be able to do is get into a little bit more granularity with that. It perhaps is too much information, but it gives you a sense as to how it is that we're allocating based on the percentage of participation in the project that then ties back to the budget. So Chris, could you go to the next slide, please? In December, the board approved $94,280 to finalize negotiations of the Tumbleweed and Onward agreements. The column 12-15-21 shows how those costs were allocated in the budget and on a percentage basis. When we actually we took that 94,000 and allocated costs to each of the each of the participants, and that became the invoice that was issued by CC Power to your CCA. Since the budget, the amount of capacity that each participant is responsible for has changed. The reasons for that change include, for example, PCE. participated in the tumbleweed agreement, but not the onward. And similarly, other participants altered the amount of their participation that was different between the tumbleweed and the onward agreements or onward contracts. And so the combination of that led to the allocation of capacity that's set forth in the 3/16/22 column. To put this in terms of the budget, the difference column is the basis of allocation of the long duration storage contract negotiation costs. And this is going to lead to a future invoice that will have additional charges for project participants having a positive difference or a negative difference, or positive or negative change in the amount of capacity that they've participated in. And so we're not intending to go out and invoice or credit today as a result of this reallocation. In future invoices, what will happen is that members will be credited or debited based on this table here. And so, so I wanted to give a little bit more insight into how it is that we arrived at the original budget and this proposal. I have a similar slide for the firm Clean Resources, but I don't think it's relevant to go through it today, given that the board had already approved the allocation of those costs in January when it approved the cost sharing agreement. So Chris, if you could just go to the final slide of the deck. Mr. Chair, this concludes the presentation that I wanted to provide on the budget. And so this is the resolutions that would follow, and I'm available for questions.
Let's go to board member questions and comments first. Are there any clarifying questions, things that people didn't understand or need further detail on? Maybe we start there. All right, it's crystal clear. Any comments? Anybody want to jump in on that? Yes, Barb.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to thank our interim general manager for the extra work on insurance issues. It was an important point for my agency, and it was a very collaborative effort. And so I just want to recognize that and say thank you.
Other comments and input this time? Jan.
Ditto Barbara's comment on the insurance, and also thank you to the general manager for working out the numbers for Peninsula Clean Energy when it was, we realized that we were being billed for both projects for the LDS, but only participating in one. So thank you for getting all that figured out.
Did have one question. Tom, as our treasurer, elected treasurer, I note that the resolution accepting the treasurer's report is referring to a report that our accountant, Maher Accountancy, and referring to it as the treasurer's report. So I just wanted to verify that you've read that and have no reason to be concerned as our elected treasurer. Is that something you can confirm?
Yes, I do. Tim passed that information on to me over a week ago when we discussed it.
Super.
Between all three of us, me, Maher, and himself, and I'm fine with what you guys see in front of you.
Okay, thanks. And then I also want to note, I think when we're talking about budgets in this presentation, our general manager was referring to budgets for specific contracts. And I think that's a good backward-looking way to assess things after we've inked a contract. But of course, looking ahead, when we plan budgets, it's my opinion, and I'd be interested if the board has any criticism of this, that we plan budgets going ahead based on the objectives of a request for offers and not tie our hands to specific project locations or sellers, so that our negotiating team has the absolute maximum ability to cancel negotiations with a supplier should they deem it to be inappropriate, even late in the process, and change objectives. And so I know this is a budget item and not a strategy item on RFOs, but I think the language we use matters. So it's not a criticism. I think you're right, Tim, when we're looking back, we were looking for budget for specific projects. But I'm flagging that for going forward. I think having that kind of latitude, for example, when we're pursuing innovative technologies or firm, clean resources, it's definitely my opinion that the POC should have the same negotiating room that our own teams do on our individual CCAs. So that's my comment. Anyone else want to comment on that or something or other? Let's go to Gretchen.
Yeah, Jeff, I like how you outlined that. I do think we need to give our POCs and future POCs a little more flexibility. I think coming back to us on reallocating budget for very small numbers, it's going to put more work on the general manager and tracking and things like that. So I'd love to hear what proposals the general manager and you kind of could bring to us.
Super. Before we go to public comment, any last input on this?
Just one idea that we may want to consider, hopefully not too far in the future, that if we do have money left over in the budget, maybe you want to just push that into reserves up to a certain point.
I like us collecting those ideas over the next 2 or 3 months and trying to bring whatever edits we may need to our governing documents or policies, maybe pull 3 or 4 of those kind of ideas together and see if we can make some adjustments. So I'll be looking for those kind of ideas. Thanks, Tom. All right, let's turn to public comment. So again, you can raise your hand. Anyone wish to comment on the budget update and the resolutions that are proposed? I'm not seeing hands going up. Did we get any written comment on this one?
No written comment.
Okay, so I'll look for a motion. Let's take these one at a time. So this first would be a motion accepting the treasurer's report.
I'll move.
Okay, I think that was Peninsula. We
Peninsula.
have a second?
Yeah, I'll second.
San Jose. All right, let's call the roll on that.
For resolution 220302, Central Coast Community Energy,
Yes.
Clean Power SF,
Yes.
East Bay Community Energy,
Yes.
Marin Clean Energy,
Yes.
Peninsula Clean Energy,
Yes.
Redwood Coast Energy Authority,
Yes.
San Jose Clean Energy,
Yes.
Silicon Valley Clean Energy,
Yes.
Sonoma Clean Power Authority,
Yes.
and Valley Clean Energy.
Yes.
Thank you. The resolution passes.
Thank you. So let's take the second resolution. Is there a motion to approve the 2022 updated budget allocations?
This is Mitch. I'll move.
All right, so we have Valley Clean Energy. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, 3CE. So let's take a roll on that.
Okay, for resolution 220303, Central Coast Community Energy,
Yes.
Clean Power SF,
Yes.
East Bay Community Energy,
Yes.
Marin Clean Energy,
Yes.
Peninsula Clean Energy,
Yes.
Redwood Coast Energy Authority,
Yes.
San Jose Clean Energy,
Yes.
Silicon Valley Clean Energy,
Yes.
Sonoma Clean Power Authority,
Yes.
and Valley Clean Energy.
Yes.
Thank you. The resolution passes.
Unless there is something that I've missed, I think we've reached the end of our meeting. Is there anybody flagging anything urgent that I missed? I'm seeing smiles. Okay, so let's adjourn the meeting. It's 1:32, and I failed to note that Nick joined about halfway through. So if our clerk could note him joining, that would be super. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Jeff.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.